Orlando, San Bernardino, Charleston, Fort Hood, and now Dallas. President Obama, by our count, will make his 11th visit to a city tragically affected by gun violence tomorrow when he touches down in Texas. It's just the latest occasion where the commander-in-chief has had to parachute into a community still grief-stricken by unexplainable loss, as that loss tests whether this nation is truly united. Vice President Joe Biden will also address the crowds in Dallas. He has testified time and time again to pain too fresh and too raw for most anyone to bear. After those 5 police officers were gunned down last week, Vice President Biden said that tragedy touched the soul of our nation and that it's on everyone to speak up both for police and for the communities that feel victimized by police. And Vice President Biden joins me now live. Mr. Vice President, good to see you as always. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
I'm happy to be with you, Jake.
So, Mr. Vice President, you just came from a closed-door meeting with law enforcement officials. You've had a long relationship with police. You authored the 1994 crime bill that put 100,000 new cops on the beat. As I'm sure you know, there are some police officers out there who don't feel that President Obama is the ally to them that you are. Some of them say that they feel President Obama has sided against them in various disputes. Did you hear any of that today? And what is your message to those police who have those concerns?
Well, first of all, it's a really good meeting. You're right, Jake. I've known these organizations and the individuals who run them for years and years and years. They're my personal friends, as well as we've worked together. The president asked each of the organizations, fellas, what do you think? And they happen to be all men. Fellas, what do you think I'm not doing? What have you not heard me say? And then there were 2 organizations that listed things that they thought he wasn't sensitive enough on and leaning forward enough. But there were also 3 organizations that said, Mr. President, I think you're doing it just right. And here's the point the president made, and you reinforced that I said. There's nothing inconsistent with supporting the police and acknowledging the problems that exist in terms of dealing with the communities that, in fact, are feeling put upon. And they're not inconsistent. And the president talked about, as did 3 of the leaders of 3 of the organizations, of the need for police organizations to say, I understand why you're concerned in the community, and we have to be more responsive. As long as you understand that we're doing a job, and the vast majority of us do it extremely well. That was the nature of the debate, of the discussion, and they went through things that they needed from us, they wanted some help on, and it went beyond verbiage and verbal support. It went to money for helping them train. A police research organization pointed out some police departments get 10 hours of training, others get 100 hours of training. They said we need more clarity in terms of how to train their forces like we do the military on de-escalation. They talked about, they did raise whether or not they needed more equipment in the so-called 1033 program, you know, the equipment from the military. The president said, I'll go back and relook at that, see if there's anything you're not getting, you should be getting, and I'm open to discussion. But it was a really constructive meeting, and I agreed that with the president designating me, that I would be meeting with them again within the next 2 weeks with a specific agenda to go over their list, and also bring in outside concerns of the community as to what they're not doing well enough. So I'm feeling good about the direction this is going.
Well, it sounds like a candid meeting if those 2 police groups were forthright with some of the concerns they've had about things President Obama said. What specifically were they concerned about, and how did the president respond?
The president responded by pointing out, which I don't think they heard loudly and clearly, that he in fact has repeatedly been supportive of the police organizations. He talked about it, he gave a list, he said, and I'll be happy to send you all these statements that I have made. And he said, but you also have to recognize that there is still institutional discrimination that doesn't just exist in policing. It exists in many other areas, hiring, housing, etc. And so then they started talking and said, well, maybe we, a law enforcement organization, should reach out and say, look, we understand why you may be concerned about how we deal with you. But let's have a conversation. Tell us what it is specifically, et cetera. So it was it's an overused Washington word. There was a real dialogue in there. And so I agreed to sit with them with a specific agenda that they make up over the next 10 days and begin to go through it as to how, and bring in the community as well to begin to work through, like I did over the years in the past in writing the COPS bill in the first place. Very specifically, how to reach out to the communities and how to reach out to law enforcement as well. The first time I've ever heard police organizations say, my guys are frightened, my guys are scared.
Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, talking about the community that you were just talking about, said that the Black Lives Matter movement is, in Mayor Giuliani's view, quote, inherently racist. And he said that some of the methods of the group enables the kind of horrific tragedy we saw in Dallas. What do you think? He is obviously speaking for himself, but there are a number of conservatives out there who share that view. Look
what the president said when the Black Lives Matter people in one demonstration said, you know, kill the police, the sooner the better, or some phrase like that. The president condemned it immediately, but that's not the black community. That's not the community. That group, that element of Black Lives Matter doesn't speak for all of Black Lives Matter, and does not speak for those folks in the black community, both middle class and poor, who know they are more likely to be pulled over than the Caucasian guy. They know that in many cases they are the focus of the police as opposed to other communities. And so it is just a very broad statement. There are some people in Black Lives Matter who don't want to talk and have dialogue, and others who do. But to make it sound like it's the NAACP or it's a major African American organization, it is an umbrella of all kinds of people who feel like there is discrimination that exists in some police departments, in some neighborhoods, and they want to talk about it and they want to deal with it.
What do you say to members of the African American community who have been through this type of thing before? There is a horrific event, and the vice president or the president come out of meeting with police leaders, meeting with community leaders, talk about how things are going to be improved, and then their lives continue to be the way that they are. Mr. Castile, the gentleman who was shot in Minnesota last week, I read a report that said he had been pulled over something like 50 times before the incident in which he was killed. These are members of the community who feel harassed, and they feel like it's never going to change. What do you say to them?
Well, what I say is we're just going to keep at it. You saw what happened in Ferguson. Two things: the civil rights investigation and the investigation in the state of Missouri said that the shooting was justified, but they also pointed out that the police department was racist, that they funded the police department by constantly pulling over and ticketing African Americans in the community to help fund the police department, and that stopped. So look, this is a very time-consuming, difficult, important process. But the most important thing for both the police to know, as well as, in my view, the community to know, is we are relentlessly trying to move forward to bring those communities together. And one of the ways to do that, Jake, is to go back to community policing. You know, we have significantly, on a relative basis, cut funding for local law enforcement. The end result is community policing, meaning cops getting out of the car, knowing the kid on the block, knowing who owns the local grocery store, going to the church, the local church, and being there on Sundays, et cetera. That's resource intense. And we can't convince our friends up on the Hill and we've constantly tried to get more money for police departments to be able to go in and do that with the communities. Hopefully this will change.
All right. The Democratic Convention kicks off in a couple weeks. Just a few days ago, FBI Director James Comey said that your presumptive presidential nominee, Hillary Clinton, was extremely careless in her handling of classified information. A poll out today says a majority of the country disapprove of the FBI director recommending not to charge her, and 57% of the country says the incident makes them worried about how she might act as president. Will a majority of Americans vote for someone that they seem so suspicious of right now?
I think they will, because I believe what's going to happen over this campaign is the straightforwardness and honesty of her campaign as to what she would do for them. Look, here's the measure I think that folks are going to apply. Look at Donald Trump and what he's saying and ask yourself, is it believable? Does he know what he's talking about? Will it solve any of my problems? And look at what she has to say, what she's proposing, and the honesty of her proposals and her willingness to deliver on them. I think that's going to ultimately be the determination. That's the best way to deal with the perception that I think that exists now. That is the best way to deal with it, is say what you believe, lay out what you're going to do, demonstrate you mean it, and I think it's going to be very hard for her opponent to do that.
Mr. Vice President, I have to say, I'm old enough to remember the 1988 presidential primary race when you left after far less serious allegations than putting national security information at risk.
Well, there are two good pieces of news about that, Jake. One is that it was clear I didn't do what I was accused of doing. And secondly, it was a time when the Supreme Court hearing for the Bork nomination was in play, and I had to make a choice. Do I go back out to Iowa and all the primary states and defend myself and fight my way back, as friends like Arlen Specter and others suggested I do, or do I stay and deal with a more? I didn't want to be an asterisk in history saying Biden went out to save the nomination or preserve the nomination. In the meantime, Judge Bork is on the court. I just ask people and that share my point of view. Imagine where we'd be, and he was a good, decent man personally, if Judge Bork were on the court right now.
But I guess my point is, you left for something far less serious than this charge against the nominee. It must confuse you in some ways.
No, it's just that I felt there was something more important than my candidacy that had to be taken care of, my responsibility as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee.
All right, Vice President Joe Biden, I'm being given the hook right now. We always welcome you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jay, for having me. I appreciate it.